Okay.
Good morning, everybody. It is Thursday, January 29th, and this is the Committee on General and Housing. We're going to just a quick review of where we are. First of all, unfortunately, as I think some of you know, our Vice Chair, Ashley Bartley, was in a car crash yesterday. She was on the highway. She was rear-ended. I'm not sure whether she'll be in today or not. She was not badly injured, but it was not an inconsequential crash. So everybody, please drive carefully. The streets are more slippery than they appear. So we're going to start today with 3 or possibly 4 witnesses as part of Mental Health Advocacy Day, which is today in the State House. And then for the rest of the morning, we're going to introduce 1, 2, 3 bills. And also what we're going to do, we're going to introduce, no, I'm sorry. At 10 o'clock, we have a witness for our manufactured home bill. At 10:30, Cameron will be back and we're going to have a discussion of the manufactured home bill. And the discussion can include people's suggestions for things that ought to go in the bill that aren't there now. In other words, it's sort of a markup, an option for markup. It's still a little early. We're going to have more witnesses, so there'll be more opportunity to do that. But this is a complicated bill, so we decided we should do it more than once. So this was just a discussion this morning. And then we're going to have an introduction to 725, which is State Labor Relations Act bill. Kate Logan will be in to do that. And then we're going to come back to manufactured homes and have Ed Barnett from the JFO come in and talk about its fiscal impact, because if you remember, it limits income, it limits sales tax, but allows for real estate transfer tax on homes that are manufactured homes. Then we'll have lunch and we'll talk about later in the morning, just before we adjourn for lunch, we'll talk about the afternoon. So welcome everybody and thanks for coming. We're going to start our testimony on the Mental Health Advocacy Day, which will go till 10 o'clock. And I guess I'm going to start with Lindsay St. Amour, who's the Executive Director of Disability Rights Vermont. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much.
Tell us your name for the record and then tell us what you think.
All right. So my name is Lindsay St. Amour. I'm the Executive Director at Disability Rights Vermont. I have been with the organization for a little over 13 years now. I've been the Executive Director for 4.5. I am also, for the last 4 years, I've been the Vice President of the Vermont Coalition for Disability Rights. So thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you this morning on Mental Health Advocacy Day. Today is just a single moment in time where we've chosen to pay special attention to mental health and to the needs of our community members. But mental health advocacy should not happen on a single day or as a special occurrence. We all have mental health needs. It is a part of our humanity. It is a fluid continuum that impacts us all and that all of us experience. So for those of you who are not familiar with disability rights, we are the protection and advocacy agency for the entire state of Vermont. The protection and advocacy system was created by Congress after egregious abuse and neglect was exposed through a series of reports by Geraldo Rivera back in the 70s that went into a school that was funded by the state of New York to provide care and treatment to individuals with a variety of disabilities. And that really went unchecked. So Congress enacted a series of legislation that said there needs to be an agency that's going to monitor and kind of investigate and look into abuse, neglect, and serious rights violations impacting people with disabilities. So that's Disability Rights Vermont for our state. We are also, because of our PNA designation, we are also the mental health care ombudsman for the state of Vermont. So that gives us an additional layer of oversight and monitoring for individuals who are in the custody or the temporary custody of the Department of Mental Health. So we wear a variety of hats. The PNA system doesn't only focus on mental health.
What is PNA?
Oh, sorry, the Protection and Advocacy Agency. So I might use a lot of different acronyms.
Remember,
This
we don't
work
know them.
Is in like acronym soup. So please, if I say something, if I say something that you're not familiar with, please interrupt me and I will clarify what I'm speaking about. So we have a variety of different federal grants focusing on protection and advocacy for individuals with developmental disabilities, mental health conditions, traumatic brain injuries. There's protection and advocacy for individual rights, which kind of covers anyone with a disability that doesn't fall into any of those other buckets. We have a grant that focuses on accessibility for voting and as well as accessibility or overcoming barriers for beneficiaries of Social Security to maintain or gain employment. So we do a lot of work throughout the state. We are a small nonprofit legal organization. All of our services are free and confidential, and we really want to try to make sure that people are empowered to really stand up for themselves, know what their rights are, and to be able to advocate on their own. We, of course, as a law office, can intervene and provide other remedies as necessary if they're unsuccessful.
How many FTEs do you have?
Oh, geez. We are a small staff of 10, including myself. We've got 2 attorneys right now. I'm an attorney as well, but I'm trying my best not to practice and staying in my lane as the executive director. And then we have some senior investigators, some advocates, our intake specialists, and some administrative staff to kind of make sure that we're covering everywhere we need to cover. Intake can be done just through our website, phone call, email. We try to be as accessible.
Where's your office?
We're right here in Montpelier on 89 Main Street. We just relocated to the city center. And as part of our work, which is unique, I think, to the PNA and Disability Rights Vermont, is that we go into places that many other organizations cannot get into. So we monitor inpatient psychiatric facilities, we monitor correctional facilities. We can go anywhere anyone is receiving treatment, which gives us a really good idea of what people are experiencing. If you haven't been in any of these settings and all you hear are the stories from folks with that lived experience, it's still not quite the same as being in a segregation unit or being in, in a room in an inpatient psychiatric unit. So it's really empowering to do this work. I'm very honored to be in this role and to serve alongside the folks that I work with. For me, this committee has the most important and impactful task this year. Housing is at the very foundation of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It is one of the most essential needs. Without it, all of our other aspects and all of our other efforts and all aspects of other things like healthcare, education, they're not going to be successful or as successful if we don't have permanent housing in place at the baseline. Traditionally, shelter was considered to be a basic need, but history and data have proven that housing, a fixed, safe, permanent structure, is the basic need. So thank you for serving on this incredibly important committee. During the course of DRVT's work, we regularly observe and hear stories relating to housing across the spectrum of what that might mean for someone. We hear stories of discrimination when someone is trying to get their feet under them, and a prospective employer won't even accept their application because their address is either associated with or is a known shelter location. We hear stories of individuals being discharged from hospitals, correctional institutions, inpatient psychiatric units without any stability in sight, where the risk of failure is either more institutionalization or death. So people are being discharged into homelessness without a permanent place to lay their head. We hear stories of individuals living in their cars, even through these dangerously cold winters, because there's not enough affordable housing for them to live safely. The gamble could not be greater, and it should not be one Vermont is willing to make over and over again. We cannot continue to gamble with people's lives. Not only is this gamble immoral, but it's also discriminatory. The intersection between people with mental health diagnoses and other disabilities amongst the those experiencing homelessness is extraordinary. In Vermont right now, according to some data from the ACLU, 72% of rented households are severely cost burdened and at risk of homelessness. Homelessness itself has increased in Vermont by over 300% since the pandemic in 2020, resulting in 4,500 Vermonters, including more than 1,000 children experiencing homelessness as of June 2025. Of these individuals, 50% report having a serious mental health condition. 28% receive Social Security benefits. More than 1,000 people disclose having physical disability, a developmental disability, or a chronic health disability. And in some cases, perhaps all of the above. This overrepresentation exemplifies the disproportionate impact Vermont's policies and practices are having on people with all types of disabilities. So now is the time to right this wrong. As DRBT engages in conversations throughout the State House regarding better access to community-based services, healthcare services, educational and employment opportunities, it all comes back to the reality of where those same individuals can lay their heads down at night. Let's say Vermont flips the switch and starts providing proactive and preventative care to people designed to improve successful integration for all Vermonters and all communities. Appointments are made timely, and services are provided timely, prescriptions are available, food security is available, job opportunities arise and are given fair consideration, educational needs are supported and met. If you don't have a safe, stable place to return to with these other valuable parts of your life, you will not have a place to put them down, to nurture them, and to watch them grow. Until we house this all, we are set up as a state for failure. For years, I've been carrying around my hope for Vermont that I try to share whenever I can. That hope is that one day Vermont will be a place whose goal it is for residents to thrive, not just survive. You can survive with shelter, but you can thrive with housing. I offer this goal to this committee, and I thank you for your commitment to the state and to all its residents. And I ask that one question you keep in your mind as you consider all of your policy considerations is this, what impact does this have on permanency and stability? Thank you for your time.
Question for you. Are you a 501c3?
Yes.
And is like what percent, I guess it's a lot of your funding comes from the federal government.
Like 92%.
Have you, one of the things we've been doing is talking to state agencies and nonprofits about what they think is going to, the impact of what's going on in Washington is going to be. Do you have any sense as to where you'll be if the House budget or the Senate budget passes?
So it's been incredibly uncertain and I don't know, scary, I guess would be the best word for it. You know, making considerations about not hiring staff. We do have 2 vacant positions right now that I feel I can't necessarily fill because I don't know whether or not we're going to be getting the same funding that we've historically gotten. Even the funding that we have gotten has been level funded over the years. So as costs have increased, we're still kind of just barely getting by. We do the best that we can, but we are constantly in a emergency preparedness mode where we're having to make sure that we're prioritizing our work into what's absolutely essential versus what we might be able to table. So it's a lot. It's a lot of juggling. It's a lot of recalculating. For a while, were, you know, facing kind of like a countdown, like, okay, if this continuing resolution doesn't get passed, I may have to lay off everybody that I employ, which would be devastating because of the important work that we do, but also they all have families, they all have lives.
Does your funding flow through a state agency?
No, so
This
we
comes
get,
directly from whom?
so a number of our grants are through HHS, ACL, the Social Security Administration. So those are the major federal.
It's ACL.
The Association for Community Living, which may or may not be a thing anymore.
Yeah, right.
It's just, yeah.
HHS being Health and Human Services?
Yes.
Okay.
Questions from the committee? I think your testimony has been very clear.
Thank you. I try to be clear. I did forget to plug one other thing. If you're interested in the work that we've been doing around housing and making sure that people are receiving services in the most integrated setting, preferably in their communities, we did a documentary last year. We had a film screening here in Montpelier on January 7th. We're going to be doing 4 more. The first screening is this coming Saturday, January 31st at the St. Johnsbury Community Hub at 1 p.m. You can go to our website, disabilityrightsvt.org. And they're all disabilityrightsvt.org. And there is an events calendar, but we have screenings in St. Johnsbury, South Burlington, Montpelier, hopefully on Disability Advocacy Day on February 11th. And then also at the Latches Theater in Brattleboro at the end of February. So if you're interested in seeing that documentary that highlights kind of the gaps in our systems and the need for community-based supports and housing, please reach out. And I'm also available with any questions you may have.
Yes.
That film is about the Olmsted decision.
Yes.
And I wondered whether you representing DRBT have thoughts about the recommendations that were made by the Vermont Homestead Commission who were never followed through on? Or do you think that there should be a new Homestead Commission altogether?
Yeah, I mean, the unfortunate thing that happened when there was a Vermont Homestead Commission, I think back in 2005, or 2004, it was in the legislature, and they said, create this commission, and then they sunsetted it right after they issued their report. So they were identified all of these gaps and all of these needs, and then there was no way to follow up on any of them. And it evaporated from statute. So it just disappeared altogether, and all we were left with was this report. So I would fully support reinstituting a commission that was stable over time, that could really like report and monitor and look into these gaps, not just at one single point in time, but over time to see what progress is happening.
So just to clarify, you would support a permanent Homestead Commission
Yes.
versus taking up where the last Homestead Commission left off?
Right. And looking at that report, all of those same facts and statistics are true. They're just probably exacerbated at this point. So there isn't really a need to reinvent the wheel and do another commission, but really to pick up where they left off, reevaluate what has happened in the last 20 years, and then build some structure so that we can have some accountability to the progress that needs to be made in order to be compliant with Olmsted.
And just to clarify, the Olmsted decision was a Supreme Court decision. I can't remember what year it was, but it was around the turn of the century.
It was 1996.
Okay.
That century.
Yeah. That, to boil it down to one sentence, looked at the degree to which people are,
I can, do you want me to?
the degree to which people are institutionalized and are housed in institutions instead of being returned to their community in more appropriate settings. And Vermont is, because of the way that we treat disability in general, Vermont is an oversubscriber to that system. So.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Our next witness is Kalia Livingston from CVOEO. Are you going to bring someone to testify with you?
Yes.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's a chair right next to there, which you could unfold, and so that both of you could sit down.
Awesome, thank
And
you.
if anybody wants to sit on these benches that are free, you could move through now before we want to let folks through for you.
And someone feel free to take Mike here as well.
Yeah, feel free to open that up. The hostess with the most.
Let me know when to.
Welcome, Kalia. Tell us your name for the record, and if you have someone testifying with you whose name I can't see, they should tell us theirs and then talk to us.
Thank you. My name is Kalia Livingston, and I am with the Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity. I'm here with Ginevra Levine, who is a Vermonter that I just met with a very impactful story that I think will go well with the information that I came to share with you. You want to introduce yourself?
My name is Ginevra Levine, and I actually live in New Hampshire, but my son lives in Springfield, Vermont. He's schizophrenic.
Awesome. Thank you for joining me. Once again, my name is Kalia. I'm with CVOEO, also known as the Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity. My role at CVOEO is the Fair Housing Project Education and Outreach Coordinator. Through that role, I do fair housing education for any interested party, which includes doing trainings for the general public as well as for housing providers and municipal officials. I also do one-on-one consultations with people who are experiencing illegal housing discrimination or are just inquiring about the Fair Housing Act and what their rights and responsibilities are under fair housing laws. During consultations, I generally assist people with drafting reasonable accommodation and modification requests. And I also assist people with filing formal fair housing complaints as well. I'm here to talk to you all today about work serving vulnerable Vermonters and the additional challenges that people with disabilities face in such a tight housing market, as well as the impact of housing cost burdens on people with disabilities and the potential of great harm to people with disabilities if notice and response time for eviction process are shortened. CVOEO serves over 20,000 Vermonters each year through housing support, educational resources, economic support and development, childcare, and many other services, and our services continue to grow. Our housing advocacy programs offer statewide helplines for both renters and manufactured home residents. And through those hotlines, people call in and we help them get more information about their rights and responsibilities, as well as help them navigate specific housing situations. Whether it be through direct service, referrals, or education, we work with clients to give them important and timely information. We also connect them to community resources and suggest best next steps for navigating whatever situation that they are trying to manage. Our Vermont Tenants Helpline receives thousands of calls and emails a year from renters with questions about their rights and responsibilities, habitability concerns, people in receipt of termination notices or in the eviction process, people receiving notices about rent increases, and also just general inquiries about how to manage neighbor conflict or conflict with their housing providers.
Kalia, are you guys, just to clarify, so there's a whole bunch of regional community action agencies like Capstone here. You're one of those, right?
Yep, we're one of the 5 community action agencies.
5 for the
Champlain Valley area.
Champlain Valley area, right?
Yep.
And by the way, just for the committee's information, the landlord tenant bill that I proposed, EOEO, I'm grateful to them. They volunteered to run the landlord tenant rights and responsibilities education project that's in the bill.
Many of our clients have membership in several protected classes, including being people with disabilities. Under fair housing laws, a person with a disability is defined as anyone with a cognitive, emotional, or physical impairment, as well as people who are in recovery from substance use disorders. We see a strong correlation between people with disabilities having low incomes, as many of them are on fixed incomes and in receipt of Social Security benefits. Our tenant advocate who runs our Vermont Tenants Hotline, as well as our manufactured home resident organizer, are the first point of contact when clients are facing things like rent increases or lot rent increases. So I have a couple stories to share with all of you regarding how people with disabilities have been impacted by housing cost burdens. After speaking with our tenants advocate, Madeline Roberts, she informed me of a caller who moved into an apartment in Burlington in August of 2024. The rent was $1,200 when she moved in. A month later, she received a rent increase notice for an increase to $1,620. And since then, her rent has been increased to $1,900 a month as of late 2025. Unfortunately, this client has a disability and was let go of her work due to not being able to perform her duties. So she's currently living on savings and is applying for services and looking for other forms of income, and also paying for her son's college. So this story just illustrates how people with disabilities can struggle to keep up with housing costs when their impairments impact their ability to work. Clients frequently contact us with support for back rent or security deposits to maintain their housing. Rental assistance is a big part of what we do at CVOEO through our community action agency. And it's crucial for people when they get behind on rent, especially after experiencing a rent increase. Also for people who are trying to move into a new space that requires first and last month's rent in addition to a deposit. These costs can be in the thousands of dollars and very unaffordable for people who have disabilities and are on fixed incomes and might not have the opportunity to increase their incomes. Immense rent increases and unaffordable move-in costs definitely make it challenging for people with disabilities to be housing secure. This also can increase mental angst and stress from unstable housing conditions, and that can take a toll on people with disabilities as well. Any person would be overwhelmed by their housing being at stake. So someone with a developmental disability may have even more difficulty comprehending the termination or eviction process, finding new affordable housing, and also moving out in a timely manner, especially to avoid eviction and not have that on their record, which can add more limitations for accessing new housing. Decreasing notice periods would create an additional barrier for people with disabilities, as they would have to juggle navigating the tight housing market, housing cost burdens, and potentially experiencing mental and physical anguish for having to deal with all of this in a significantly shorter amount of time. In my experience, renters do want to have successful tenancies. However, those in protected classes may have limitations. This can make it especially difficult for people with disabilities to access and sustain adequate housing, and can hinder their ability to practice executive function. A person with a mobility issue may have to look longer to find suitable, accessible housing. Someone with a cognitive disability may struggle with navigating a housing search on their own and might be looking for support from a social worker or a case manager to help them with that. All these things can take time for someone who has additional barriers. These examples all show how people with disabilities may require more assistance and more time to find and maintain housing. Additionally, Vermont has a large aging population, and it's important that we consider when age and disability start to intersect. Many of our elderly clients are cost burdened by housing expenses and would find an abrupt need to move to be really disruptive to carry out based on the status of their health and wellness overall. And I have another example to share with you. This person is a resident of Windsor County. They're 93 years old and they are a manufactured home resident. And just a quote from them to share what their experience has been. I've been here 52 years. I can't understand why they need to raise the rent so much. If they keep on raising it up, I don't know what's going to happen here in the future. I have other bills I have to pay too besides the rent. And the rent is almost half of what I make from Social Security. This client's rent has risen an average of 6.3 annually since 2021, and that outpaces her Social Security adjustment.
6.3%.
Yes, thank you. And that outpaces her Social Security adjustment of 4.1% a year for a cost of living adjustment. So as the rent increases outpace what she's making, it becomes really difficult for her to determine if she can maintain the housing that she's in, and also figuring out how to find new housing.
Do you happen to know, do you know whether this individual is in a mobile home community, a manufactured home community?
Yes, the people who we work with that are manufactured home residents are a part of manufactured home lots.
And do you know whether it's privately run or a co-op?
I don't know that, but I could get that information.
No, I'm just curious. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Gail.
The rental assistance program in community action Is that for whether you have a disability or not?
There are some eligibility parameters, which I'm not familiar with. I don't work for the Community Action Program.
Mhm.
But it's not just for people with disabilities or people in protected classes.
Okay, do you know if at one point it was 3 months? If you were arrears and they would
Yes.
only allow 3 months, but you had to provide that you would be able to start paying your rent regularly after that 3 months?
I do know that it was 3 months. I'm not sure about the conditions for that eligibility, and it's since been reduced to just 1 month of back rent.
You could find, we can find out more, Gail, by talking to Kathleen Burke, because the Vermont Housing,
One state housing authority.
Vermont State, thank you. Vermont State Housing Authority runs that program. It's defined, it's authorized by one sentence in state law and defined administratively. And I do know that there are discussions about trying to make it a little more liberal. But of course, there are funding restrictions. The landlord tenant bill that I introduced has $1 million for that program. Okay, go on. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No worries. So similar to the client story, like I just shared, there's a lot of elderly people who could potentially face homelessness due to similar circumstances. And it's important that we don't wait for seniors and other Vermonters on fixed incomes to be priced out of their homes. So I'm here just to basically share that I think it's important that when creating housing policies, you all in this wonderful committee can consider how constituents that are most vulnerable to discrimination and displacement are affected. Implementing things like rent stabilization, limiting manufactured home lot rent increases, and prohibiting Social Security deposits that exceed more than 2 months' rent could really benefit Vermonters, especially those with disabilities. And I really appreciate you all hearing my testimony today. I want to give some time for Ginevra to share her story as well, and hopefully have some time for questions if needed.
Thank you, Ginevra.
So I'm Ginevra Levine, and I just recently moved to New Hampshire. I taught in the small schools here in Vermont for over 25 years before I lost my eyesight. My son has had learning disabilities and most recently was diagnosed with schizophrenia.
I'm sorry, with what?
Schizophrenia. He has been disabled for the last 10 years. He was in Beekman House for a couple of years, and now he's living independently. He gets $1,900 for Social Security, and he pays $1,700 in rent for a dumpy third floor, 1-bedroom apartment. It actually has a 2x4 that keeps the back door shut. But it was what we could find. It's what we could do. And it's extremely difficult without mine and my parents' help. Leighton would not be able to survive.
Questions of the committee to either of these witnesses? Ginevra, thank you very much for that compelling testimony. Yes,
Something else.
Yeah, thank you both for the work CVOEO does and for your testimony. Do you what has been your experience, Ginevra, availing yourself of any of the resources, or attempts to reach agencies that or services that might intervene on the behalf of your son?
The most HCRS has been
What is that?
health care. Rehab and rehabilitation have been incredibly helpful most of the time. Had some bumps in the road. When Leighton lost his housing at Beekman House, which is a housing situation in Ludlow, Vermont, for people like Leighton, they were going to drop him off as a homeless shelter. I called everybody, and I'm not kidding, everybody. and nobody could help. His caseworker at HCRS knows the guy who rents this apartment and got him to rent it to Layton at $1,700. That was a desperate move for us to get him housing, because I did not want him dropped off at a homeless shelter. That would have created a whole bunch of other problems. So I would hear back from them months after I got him housing. So I don't hear from people. And I'm very diligent at calling people.
Thanks.
Other questions by the committee? Yes, Mary?
Thank you. Thank you both for your testimony. Weren't there available any like group homes that he could go to?
No one had openings, nobody, there was nothing available.
Thank you.
Yes.
What I've heard is that when a Vermonter is in crisis, they might get a spot somewhere, but not until they're in actual crisis.
And when they're in crisis, that's not the time to be trying to move them either.
Right.
Right,
You know, it's,
yeah.
Thank you so much, both of you, for taking the time to come to the State House this morning and to spend time with us here. It's been helpful.
Thank you for having us.
Our next witness is the Executive Director of Upper Valley Services, Gloria Quinn, who is with us in person. Despite
Morning. I always intended to be in person. Just want to say, I tried to get here. as-
well, the agenda, yeah, it doesn't matter. It's better in person.
Boy, my heart dropped. The testimonies have been very compelling and I'm.
Gloria, you
glad-
should just identify yourself for the
Oh.
record. That's
Sorry.
just the only formality in the room.
I'm so sorry. I'm Gloria Quinn. I'm the Executive Director of Upper Valley Services. And I am going to speak with you. I have a written testimony that I submitted. I'm just going to talk with you because so much has already been covered.
Tell us just to sketch quickly Upper Valley
I will,
Services.
yes, I will. So Upper Valley Services, we provide services to individuals with intellectual and developmental IDD disabilities throughout Central and Upper Valley and Central Region. We are designated though to serve people with IDD for Orange County. So that's a little over 200 people. We also provide services to about 120 individuals, mostly elders, through the Adult Family Care Program, the AFC program, through our program called Vermont Comforts of Home. And that is throughout Vermont. And that is community-based care for people who qualify for nursing home level of care. And they would live with people who want to share their homes and share supports with them. So this ties to, I'll try not to jump around, but I'm trying to get to the most compelling parts. I'm here to support investments for people with IDD, for housing for people with IDD. And you've heard already so much, so many of the reasons, but I can speak from the program side of the house, from the agency side of the house about what it is we strive to do and what is happening for people with IDD. So where people live now, and I'm representing the network, but I'll try to be clear about when I'm talking about our agency and when I'm talking about statewide network. Where people live now, about 39%, so there is roughly about 3,500 people with IDD receiving services in the state of Vermont. 39% of those people are living with family, aging family members. And 39% of those people are living in shared living, a shared living model. And this model.
Wait a minute. So the 3,500, 39% are living like with their family
With family members.
that are getting on.
Many of those family
yeah.
members are aging.
Okay, and then you said another 39.
Another 39% are living in the shared living model, which you may
Yeah,
have heard
right.
much about. It is living with individuals or family members in their own homes and with built-in supports. It's been a very cost-effective way that people can be served, and Vermont is probably one of the unique states that has primarily focused on that as the model. It's cost-effective. It can be very high-quality outcomes, and so there are reasons for that. I've worked in 4 states, this being my last chosen state to work in, retire in. But I used to come to Vermont all the time, not just because I love Vermont, but because I was always looking at, I've been doing this for 42 years. So we were always looking at Vermont and the key values and the quality outcomes. However, what has happened over time, as people age and shared living providers are also aging, and they're informing us as agencies that we've surveyed our shared living providers. 25% were telling us 2 years ago that within 5 years, they were going to be retiring and aging out. So they've committed their lives and they've done an amazing job, primarily the vast majority. But we have an aging population. Many people are also living on their own with some intermittent supports. And there are people who have very high acuity needs that are living in their own homes with 24-hour staff support, sometimes double staffing. So this is the range, it represents the range of needs of folks that we're serving in the state of Vermont. I would like to just bring in that what Lindsay referenced. Approximately half of the people that we serve in the state of Vermont are diagnosed co-occurring with co-occurring mental health issues. It's nearly 60% for those that Upper Valley Services provide supports to. So when let me give you one more fact. Just in October, we've been looking at, I call it this kind of the silent crisis that's been happening. So what we see or hear about, and that's a devastating example that was just provided. What we hear about maybe are just the very few that people with IDD who are unhoused or nearly unhoused, and we don't even hear about that. Our provider system, our designated agencies and specialized service agencies have been experiencing people on the brink of the cliff for a long time. I've only been working at this agency for 5 years. I've been the executive director for 5 years. And people believed, board members believed it was not a good thing to obtain housing for reasons, because they believed the model, and it is true, the model, shared living model, has been very, very high quality for many years. But there aren't shared living providers coming in, not many, who want to be able to commit to this work. This is hard work and it's good work, but it's hard work. And it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We are all on it. I work with some of the most committed people you will ever know. And I'm very, very proud of the work that they do. But what happens is that when someone is aging and can no longer care for their child, and what often happens is someone has been keeping it together on a wing and a prayer, and then they're going into the hospital, and now they're not coming home right away, or maybe in some cases not at all. So in October alone, 144 individuals with IDD across the state of Vermont were at great risk of complete homelessness on the streets. So they are, and you've heard some examples, they're in temporary housing where people, some of these shared living providers will step forward and say, temporarily, I can take this person in. They are in staffed arrangements, and boy, talk about there being no housing stock. We're out there looking for housing and it is expensive. So some of these examples were profound. Now we're putting staffing in, and often this is without funding, and this is without the resources. And most people do not bring those resources to the tables themselves, and most families don't have those resources to assist. So we also happen to be the agent. There is a reference to crisis spaces in the state, statewide crisis resources. We operate those crisis resources. So there are 6 beds, 6 individual spaces
that we offer to the state. And it is constantly filled. We've had one individual there with very complex needs. She's been in a temporary housing space where it's set up in a therapeutic manner to help stabilize, work with the teams and assist them into another housing situation. We have one woman who's needed to stay with us now running on 3 years. And she's not moving because there is no place for her to go. And when we talk about the need for housing, stable housing, affordable and accessible housing, we're talking about also the staff supports or live-in supports to go with it. So they have to go hand in hand. So I just want to say that I was privileged to be on the Act 69 committee. So I think this movement now that is cross-sectional with self-advocates and families and providers and funders and developers and housing experts to be at the same table is imperative. And we need the continued investments. The Road Home, and I'm not sure if you've read the Road Home, but it's the report that came out of the Act 69 committee. We're talking about over the next 5 years, 600 units.
Right.
That's profound. And I would say that this is really silent or almost invisible, because as stretched as our agencies are, and I can speak for myself for Upper Valley Services, through the systems reform change, through everything that's happening, through the obvious housing crisis that's happening in the state of Vermont, the vast majority of people are not taken care of in the way that they should be, because people deserve to be in permanent stable housing. I think both people referenced that prior. The transitional housing is survival, but permanent housing is security, and it's where stability can grow. And it's where things can happen from there, health, wellness, all of it. And that is what we really truly need. The permanency piece is a factor that I cannot underscore enough. And the trauma that has continued to be perpetuated for people who are in and out of housing because they do not have a place that they call their own and they know that they can stay. It's imperative that we change that. I bring in my work in other states just to say, and I love this state and I love the values and the models that exist here, but there's not obviously enough. I've never been in such nail biting situations on behalf of people for the predicament that every Vermonters in general and Vermonters with IDD are in. So for every person that you hear about, there are about, remember, the 144 just in October alone. It's a growing number of people that are near that unhoused crisis, along with, and I was shocked at some of the numbers that were reported about. Wish I could remember, but the numbers that are actually with IDD that are actually homeless now. So I didn't have that number, but there's no one in our agency that we serve that is unhoused. But this predicament is so dire and soon to be untenable. So I would ask that the continued investments happen for housing specifically for everyone, but to finally include an earmark for people with IDD. I remember the self-advocate, who most people probably know, and some of his comments reverberate in my ear. And it's basically, we need the same as everyone else. We want and need the same as everyone else. I would say that the lack of stability is even more impairing to people who need the care and continuity of care on a very regular basis, not just to survive, but to thrive and be the contributing members to their communities that they really want to be and deserve to be.
Thank you. Question.
I've got 2 quick questions. As Upper Valley Services, does your organization straddle Vermont and New Hampshire?
We do.
So can you tell us about the proportionality between Vermont and New Hampshire?
Well, we mainly bring people, staff in from New Hampshire, so that's really our connection to New Hampshire. We are always trying to recruit staff from just about anywhere, and many staff can live more affordably in New Hampshire, and so we bring them over as much as we can. We do not serve anybody who lives in New Hampshire.
Okay, that's what I was actually asking.
I'm sorry.
And my understanding, having served on the healthcare committee my first term, at that point, shared housing, the shared housing model really cratered in the Upper Valley in particular. And I wondered whether, since you've been in your role for 5 years, whether you've seen any of that come back after that bottoming out.
No, and what I would say is, I did not share that Upper Valley is one of the Act 186 recipients, which we were really pleased about, but we've started some housing initiatives, both in Waterbury and in Randolph. So we've been almost fully funded, and so we're supporting housing arrangements that allow for people to be both in inclusive settings and in small group settings together, where live-in staff or built-in staff supports can happen for 6 to 9 people. And that is just kind of one piece of the hard work that we've been doing over the past 3 years. But there's so much more that's needed. We're very grateful to our funders. We've done this in partnership with Down Street Housing. So we're very grateful that there's more emphasis on this and there has been some funding earmarked for this. It's very important. But there's so much more needed across the board and with various models of housing. I'm sorry, wanted to say many people are asking for small group to be able to live with peers. Younger people really want to live with peers, and they want supports built into the models where 3 or 4 people can live together. And so there's.
And that was exactly what cratered during COVID, because the group setting couldn't work as such because of the contamination possibility. Or that was my understanding, and maybe I'm misremembering that, but so you, just to clarify, did you say that you have been able to place people in Waterbury in group setting?
No. So we serve people in Waterbury. There is Marsh House, which is being built by Down Street Housing. And there are 3 apartments set aside, accessible, will be affordable apartments set aside for use. We will have staffing on site. And so that will be a very nice, inclusive setting for people to have access to downtown. So that's one setting, one model. Another model is a renovated home in Randolph Center that will have a garage, also is in process being renovated as an ADU. So one person will be able to live in the ADU in that renovated setting. And then the house will house 2 people with disabilities with live-in staff.
Okay, I'm really not trying to needle you.
No, it's okay.
I'm just trying to understand, if your organization is based in the Upper Valley, does that mean that people from the Upper Valley will be moved up to Waterbury?
Only if they want to be. No, not necessarily. We serve many people in the Washington County area. And so there are already people we serve that have been asking, and many of those families also are part of the large DDHI family advocacy group that I've been supporting it. I've been allowed to be a part of at times, and we support those efforts wholeheartedly. So when we talk about group homes in Vermont, and I just want to say, in my experience, 25 over 32 of my career were in Rhode Island. And there were vast investments in group living arrangements and homes in Rhode Island. So I ran many, many group homes. It's not the same. It's not apples to apples. In Vermont, there are some licensed group homes that are operating, and we have one of those within the state. I believe there are 15, but I might have the number a little wrong. And I came during the pandemic, so just want to reference that too. So what happened prior to the pandemic, I don't have full detailed knowledge of. So the investments in housing that I see happening now are just starting to really roll. The Act 186 catalyzed that experience for focus on people with IDD who needed other alternate housing models. And that was really a profound start to this process. And now with Act 69 report, it's really clear how the investments are needed. And it's a multi array of models. Many people need different things. Some people really, really do well in individualized arrangements, safe for them, safe for everybody. Some want to be with groups and can live in groups, some more independently. And I'm sorry, I feel like I'm not answering what you really need.
What I really, I get all of that and I agree with all of that. There's no one answer. I'm just trying to figure out what your area, I mean, really geographically speaking, what your area of coverage is.
What Upper Valley is. just-
Upper
just
Valley
Upper Valley.
services.
We are in Orange County, so serving people with IDD, we're in Orange County, we're the designated agency for Orange County. We are also in Washington County.
So not Windsor County.
No,
Okay, so Upper Valley, meaning Orange.
Orange.
Okay.
and Randolph,
That is
Central.
what I misunderstood. Thank you.
Well, that would be me not being a Vermonter forever, so I guess I'm a flatlander. somewhere else.
We're kind of at the point now where I guess if there are any quick questions, we really have to move on. Thank you so much, Lori. I really appreciate your taking time to testify.
If I could, and this is not meant for any other reason as a reminder, if I could just squeeze balls, what you do.
Stress housing.
Stress balls.
Housing
Very
stress.
I would expect those.
Housing
I like
stress.
housing stress balls.
Yes,
I like that.
alleviate stress it's housing.
Thank you.
It's fundamental. So here for anybody who would like some.
Up in transportation
Working
committee, they
it
used
for
to
the
have
day.
trucks and cars.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe, you want to?
Yeah. I have more.
One for each, one for each, yeah. That's fine.
Thank you, everybody.
They're great reminders what we're here for.
Members of the committee. Members of the committee, may I ask, do people, the Secretary of State's office is here. Can we go another half hour without a break, or should we take a break now? Which would you like?
I'd like a break.
I love
Okay.
that.
We'll take a break.
Take a break.
David, are you, be patient? Let's be back here at, please, just 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Back.